Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
Today
for
we
having
have,
me.
Brittany has a YouTube channel and she's actually pretty awesome. She's recording her cancer journey, and I was really interested in watching her and all the stuff that she's sharing. She's really good at opening up and talking about a lot of things about her journey with cancer so far. And Brittany, if you want to do a little introduction, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hello, my name is Brittany, and I am a metastatic breast cancer thriver. I say thriver because I've been able to continue to work during my time and just have a fulfilling life, even though, cancer is it gets you. It really does. It kind of shakes up your world a little bit. But that's why I say thriver. And I'm just, on this journey with a lot of other people. But yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining me. So you have breast cancer is it metastasized anywhere or is it local?
Yeah. So originally, when I was first diagnosed, so we actually have some really good news since then. But when I was first diagnosed, I was like 28 years old or 29. I had just turned 29, and it was in my breasts, in my lymph nodes, my liver, my bones. And so it was just kind of taking over. It was pretty scary at first to get that initial diagnosis. I was told right away, they're like, this is something that you're going to have forever for the rest of your life. The goal is not to make it disappear or go away, but it's just to keep you living the longest. And so I was like, oh, wow, okay. But since then, they put me on hormone therapy and targeted therapy. And like a bone treatment as well. But basically the type of cancer that I have, it eats the hormones. So if you suppress them and then you add the additional like targeted therapy is kind of like oral chemotherapy. So I never had to go through chemotherapy. But it's like pills that I have to take every day. And it has very similar side effects to chemo, but I still have my hair, so it's less harsh on the body. But since then, it's been almost 2 years now since I've been going through treatments. And now the remainder of it is just in my breast. So in August, actually coming up, I'll be having a surgery to get the rest of it removed. But they said that I'll still have to continue treatment because basically once it metastasizes, there are small cellular molecular cancer that could be around your body, and they don't really, and that might not show up on the PET scans. So I have to continue treatment. I don't know how long, but at least like 10 years is what they said.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're only 28 when you were diagnosed. How old are you now?
I'm 30 now. Yeah.
30 now. Targeted therapy. So is it like an immune therapy or what kind of?
It's called, oh gosh. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's similar to chemotherapy, except for instead of targeting like all of your cells, it only targets specific types of cells in your body. That's why it's less harsh on your body, but it basically like sits on those cells and stops them from growing and multiplying. So that's one good thing. I guess there's not a good thing about cancer, but the type of cancer that I have, there are a lot of different treatment options. The type of cancer that I have is actually more receptive to targeted therapy than chemotherapy, which is lucky for me because then I don't have to go through chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is going to be like a last result. I've already been through a few different types of treatments. For targeted therapy, I was originally on a medication called Ibrance, but the side effects were really bad for me. Like I would be passing out because I would be feeling so unwell. And I couldn't really function like that. And then I was on a medication called letrozole, and I had so much bone pain that I couldn't do anything. Like I would wake up with my hands like this and I couldn't spread them because the bone pain was so bad. But since then, I switched to another medication called Kisqali, and then another one called anastrozole. So the Kisqali is a targeted therapy, and then the anastrozole is the hormone therapy. And those, minus a lot of the nausea, they've been working better for me. Of course, with all cancer medication, you're going to have the fatigue, you're going to have the nausea. Those are just things that kind of go hand in hand with the treatment. But so far, it's going, much better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Being diagnosed at 28 must have been extremely challenging. Like, I'm only 36. I was diagnosed at 34, turning 35. But yeah, like, you got your whole life ahead of you, and all of a sudden you're faced with this great big roadblock, the biggest problem of your life. So what was the initial impact of that diagnosis?
I think it really shook my life upside down because I was just starting my new career. So I was a teacher, an elementary teacher for a little while, and then I went back to school to get my master's degree. So I went and I got a master's degree in counseling, and I wanted to move into the school counseling career. So I had just started my new job. I work at a small charter school, so I do both teaching and counseling work together. But I was just starting my new job. I just entered a new relationship that I was in. Life was going really well. I was like looking up. I was in and out of the gym like 3 times a week. I was really fit. I was really active. Things in my life were just going so well. So when I originally got that diagnosis, it just kind of felt like everything that I had just built and worked for kind of came crumbling down, because I didn't know if I was going to have to leave work, if I was going to be on disability. I didn't know if I was going to be able to function, being on cancer treatment, it's really hard to be active. And I was very active before as well. And I just, don't have the energy. So I had to like learn new things that I was interested in, and kind of like not put work as so much of a forefront of my life, and kind of take a step back and just really look at life in a different way. And yeah, it definitely shook things upside down for sure.
What was the lead up to your diagnosis? Did you have any symptoms?
I had a lot of pain in my breast area, and I felt there was like this big lump. So I knew that something was wrong, and I went into the doctor, and they were like, "You're so young that it's probably nothing, that it's probably just, it's called fibroadenoma. You probably have that, and it's no big deal. It's nothing to worry about." And I was like, well, whatever it is, it's very painful and I want it out. So they were like, okay, well, we'll send you for imaging, for ultrasound. That way we can get you in for surgery and you can just get it removed. So the way that they were originally treating it was not like I had cancer. It was like I had fibroadenoma. So it was taking me a long time to go in for imaging. And I finally went in for imaging, and I knew right away. They were like, this lump that you're feeling, like, it's very painful. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay, they're doing the imaging on it. And they're like, this doesn't look good. And instantly I knew. I was like, oh gosh. But, I had other symptoms other than the pain. I had a lot of side aches, and I had the cancer in my liver, which makes sense. But I just contributed all of the side aches to like maybe eating before I was working out, or working out too much. I didn't really correlate them with something that was going on in another place of my body. I didn't really realize, but now I know that the pain in my liver was also the same cancer that was in my breast that was giving me the pain for that as well.
And so at the time, I've watched your YouTube channel. So at the time when you had a great relationship, everything was going great, and this happened, and you talk a lot about how your relationship fell apart, and that's very courageous of you to open up about, I think, because having a major cancer diagnosis like this it's very hard on relationships. And unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for you, but now you seem to be bouncing right back and getting back to it now, but it took you quite a while too.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that hurdle? Because like, this is a very serious situation, but mentally and emotionally, like, how did you finally set it aside and get yourself ready to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, that was yeah, that was a big thing. I think first, going and having the relationship going on while you have a cancer diagnosis, and it was a new relationship as well. It was fairly new. We had been together for less than a year, but he was my like ride or die at first. Like, he was the one going to all of my appointments with me. And, the breakup was really hard because now I had to figure out, okay, who am I branching out to that's now going to be my support network? I reached out to my church friends and my family as well, to help kind of like be that support system. But it was definitely weird at first, kind of like branching out and reaching out to people to be, that support system, because I've always been kind of like this person that's very independent. And so it's really hard for me to ask for help. But that was a big part of it, is now I had to like ask for help from people, and I felt like I was a burden and I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. But a lot of that was reaching out to my support network. And then there was therapy as well. I went to therapy for about a year, and therapy was really helpful for me. But really just connecting to my support network, allowing myself to kind of go through the breakup and the pain of the breakup. Like, there's one thing about being diagnosed with cancer and the grief with that. And then there's the grief of having a relationship kind of go down south. And both of those were grieving hard. And I was in a pretty bad space for like 3 months. But yes, I did bounce back with support from my friends and family, and going to therapy and just allowing myself to feel all of the feels and allow myself to write it out. I'd love to write, and to journal and stuff like that, and listen to music. So all of that together kind of helped me get through that time.
That's really tough thing. Like you mentioned, the burden of being diagnosed with cancer, especially at our age, just it's really a crazy thing. Unless you've experienced it, it's really hard to put, like, everybody understands it, but putting it into context. And cancer is such a complicated illness, and the doctors it always seems like there's a lot of unclarity, like nothing's ever clear in your future.
Yes.
Like, how do you plan for the future with so much fog in the way?
Yeah, that's one thing that really kind of shook me up as well, because I never felt like my doctors were giving me clear and concise answers to things that I would ask for. I'm like, am I going to live? Am I not going to live? How long do I have to live? Like, how much time do I have left? Like, if I do this treatment, or if I do this treatment, what is it going to be? And they don't have all of the answers. And then trying to communicate that to your loved ones, your friends and your family, when they want to know too, and they're impacted by it. And you're like, I have no idea how long this is going to take. And then, I don't know if anybody really talks so much about compassion fatigue, but at first, when you first get diagnosed, everybody is like, oh my gosh, like, let me help, let me help, let me help, let me help. And then after a while, the compassion fatigue, after a couple of years, you've been going through this for a long time, your friends and your family. And I think they start getting used to everything, and like, you're still in the trenches and you're still battling it out. But I guess the response towards it isn't exactly the same. I had a family member that was like, oh, you went through cancer for a year, it must be over with now. And I was like, that's not exactly how it works. But some people believe that this cancer time frame is just 1 year, and you go through all of the chemotherapy and you either live or you die. And it's not that simple. It's not that easy to kind of like calculate how much treatment you're going to have, or how much time that you're going to have, or stuff like that.
Absolutely. 1 second. Everybody, it's extremely challenging. A lot of people don't really understand the cancer, and I understand exactly where you're coming from in terms of compassion fatigue. It is a real thing. In terms of dealing with close family and trying to communicate with them in terms of what's going on. Did you ever find that you had close family getting mad or frustrated or almost feel like you weren't including them?
Yes, I did, which is part of the reason why I tried a bunch of different things. I tried creating spreadsheets and allowing everyone to have access to them. And I was logging my experiences in the spreadsheet and, the YouTube channel as well. But there are certain family members that you just feel more comfortable with, and some family members that you just don't feel as comfortable with. My sister, she's in the medical field, so I tend to go to her for a lot of things. So then other people kind of feel a little bit left out as well. They're like, oh, why are you always going to her? And it's like, well, it's not my intention to just like only have one person like highly, highly involved, but she's just the one that I feel most comfortable with at this moment, and it's hard because other people might not understand that. They're like, oh, what's wrong with me? But it's nothing that's wrong with them. It's just that there's naturally people that you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable with.
And did that ever cause a rift in the family or any family feuds?
It not a family feud, but more of like one person in particular. I won't mention any names, but one person in particular was feeling pretty left out and got a little bit upset about it. But we worked around it. We had that person, come see me, and, it was just one of those things where I wasn't expecting to do a conflict resolution type situation in this thing, and a lot of it is managing other people's emotions around your own diagnosis, which is something that a lot of people also don't talk about because they don't really want to make, other people feel bad, or it's not something that I hear talked about a lot. But managing other people's emotions, especially when you're telling them about your diagnosis, that was the big thing for me as well.
It's an extremely challenging thing to do, and you already have your own emotions that you have to regulate. You're dealing with your own mortality essentially, and here you are stuck in a situation where you have to manage everybody else's emotions, and that's just it's so hard to explain that to people. Like there's some people I find that are absolutely amazing at going to and talking to, and they just make light of it, and then there's other people that they're just so far out in left field. I'm sorry, but they are, and they just don't understand. And it's you almost have to repeat yourself constantly, and they still don't seem to comprehend what you're going through and dealing with, and it's just compassion fatigue. I love it. That is a fabulous way of putting it, but also you almost want to call it an annoyance when at the beginning. Something that really bothered me was everybody reaches out when you're first diagnosed and then they disappear.
Yes. I had family that I hadn't heard from in years. And I'm like, where have you been? I haven't heard from you in years. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we care so much about you. We love you. And then after a few months, they disappear again. And you're like, are you like, I don't want to be like, in my head about it. But in my head, I'm kind of thinking like, are you just trying to like make amends or something because you think I'm dying? Like, and I know that's bad to say or like bad to think, but that's kind of how I was thinking, is kind of like, are you only doing this because you think that I'm dying right now? And that's just what constantly went through my head, is every time somebody reached out that I hadn't heard from in a long time, and I'm like, you think I'm dying, and that's the only reason why you're reaching out. And
there's nothing wrong with them reaching out. The reaching out part's fine. It's the disappearing 2 months later that's the issue.
Exactly.
Like that's just that part where it is like, oh my God, like I never understood that one. So now at this point you're looking at surgery. So I think you've kind of went on and off a bunch of different drugs that you kind of highlighted. Your cancer had metastasized, but now it's kind of back to just the one local area. But just so everybody understands, when you have stage 4 cancer and it's metastasized, in order for a scan to detect it, it takes like 1 million cells to make just a little tiny 1 millimeter tumor. So the problem is that those little tiny cells are through your whole body. So just because they're not on a scan doesn't mean they're not there. they're
Correct.
there. It's a lifetime diagnosis. So
Yeah.
now you're looking at surgery. How did that come up, and what are your feelings on that? And what are your long-term consequences of it? And what have you thought about that?
Yeah, so the initial reason for it was honestly the surgery is for my anxiety, like in full transparency, because it was shrinking in every other place in my body. And then the part that it was left over, it stopped shrinking, it stopped moving, it stopped doing anything. And there's a lot of cells in that one little spot, and it's a small little tumor that's left. But they basically said I could just leave it there or I could just have it removed. And for my own mental health, I'm like, let me just have that part removed because I don't know why it's shrinking everywhere else. And then in this spot, it's just like not shrinking anymore. And that makes me afraid that whatever treatment I'm on, like cancer is very unpredictable. You could be fine. It could be stagnant one moment. And then the next moment, it just decides that it wants to start duplicating all of these cells. And so that was my main motivation behind why I'm going to do it, get it removed. But like you said, since you're stage 4, it's a lifetime diagnosis. And so I'm only doing a lumpectomy. So instead of doing a full mastectomy like some other people do, I'm still going to have to do treatment. I'm still going to have to stay on treatment. So there's really no point of me doing a very, very big surgery. It makes no difference in my case because I'm going to have to stay on treatment. The times where they do the full mastectomies or double mastectomies, that is when people have kind of like an end. So stage 1 through 3, where they're able to get all of the cells out because it stayed kind of more localized. But since mine went distant, it really makes no difference. So I'll be getting a lumpectomy, which is just them removing the tumor, nothing else around the area. Healing time should be pretty quick. They said, a couple weeks and I should be totally fine. But it's mainly the surgery is for my anxiety so that I am not thinking in my head so much about like just rapid duplication all of a sudden.
Oh, I don't blame you. Like, you got a tumor sitting in your breast. Like, the first thing you want to do is get it out. And
Yeah.
I think that's a completely normal reaction and feeling. So you did have chemo though at one point, did you say? You
No, so
never
I
had chemo.
never had to go through chemo.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I've escaped that. If I stop responding to targeted therapy and hormone therapy, then I'll have to go on to chemo, but that won't probably be for a long amount of time unless for whatever reason my body stops responding to the types of treatment that they've been giving me.
Well, that's fabulous because I just read a study that was published that 60% of people that had chemo have a reoccurrence of a new type of cancer within 10 years. And at our age, like, I mean, I did seriously heavy chemo and radiation. So my risk of, even if I made it that far with this cancer, of a new type of cancer is extremely high. So it's definitely for the best that you got to skip chemo, I would think. You talk a lot about working out. So you used to work out. How's working out going now?
It's hit and miss. I want to do more. The fatigue from cancer treatment, though, it is real. The medications that I'm on, like if I work out, sometimes they'll make me dizzy or like lightheaded. So I have to really take it easy. I try to walk. I'm trying to do a little bit of yoga. I joined like a softball team that I'm doing on the weekends. But it's really, really challenging. I am nowhere near to the way that I used to be. I used to be really, really in shape. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Orange Theory, but I was like an Orange Theory fanatic and I was always there and I was really in shape. And now it's like learning a whole new different body. I have to learn what my body can and what my body can't do. And it's still a learning process. I'm still learning. I feel like I'm still learning what this new body can do and what it can't do. And it's all a process. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to get any easier, but the good news is that you and I, we've been doing this long enough that we can get more in tune with our body, and we can find ways to work around it. The chemo fatigue, well, or cancer fatigue, is real. Some people are able to push through it. And I guess that I had a complete 180 when I really went to focus on diet, exercise, fasting, and incorporating that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what have you kind of done in that in terms of additional treatments and therapy to help yourself heal and perform better?
Yeah, I do intermittent fasting, which really alleviates a lot of my digestive issues. I think it's just like well known in the cancer community that if you're on cancer medication, you're going to have digestive issues. And so I do intermittent fasting. I went completely plant-based for about 3 months. And I was trying all of these different diets, and I went sugar-free. And I'm not going to lie, like the beginning of my treatment, I was seeing significant drop like in the cancer. Like I had a 75% decrease in my cancer in amount of 3 months. And that is when I did all of the sugar-free, and I went plant-based and all of that stuff. But ultimately, it wasn't sustainable for me. And I was really tired. I don't think I was getting enough protein in my diet. And I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to focus so much on my diet anymore. So now I try to eat healthier. I'm nowhere near as like a perfect diet. I do have a little bit of a sweet tooth. So I don't know if diet like contributes to the reason why at the beginning I had such massive like decrease in all of my cancer. You know, I can't say for sure, but I do know that it wasn't sustainable for me.
Yeah, so you tried one type of diet, right? And that was plant-based. And that I hear that so often, that plant-based diets are not sustainable, especially with cancer, because maintaining body mass is a major issue.
Yeah.
Plants are so inflammatory on the system as well. They do help with treating cancer because you're not getting the glucose uptake for sure. Did you ever consider going to a carnivore-based diet?
I considered it, but my type of cancer, it eats hormones. So I've been told that it's not the best diet for my type of cancer. Um,
Hmm.
so that's just kind of like the reasoning behind that. But I knew somebody that was on a carnivore diet and made them feel better. I think everybody's body is a little bit different, you know. But again, I don't think a carnivore diet would be sustainable for myself either. Just with my digestive issues, I don't think I would be able to handle it. No.
No, and that's a lot of people think that way. That's a completely normal feeling. Um, in terms of the hormone-based part,
Mhm.
who told you that carnivore diet would be bad for your type of cancer?
I honestly like it's all of these videos that I just keep watching. I don't know what's real anymore, and I don't know what's not real anymore. Um, like you hear all of these different things coming from all of these different sources, and it's really hard to figure out what is real research and what is opinion. And so for me, that's where I have just kind of found myself in this like I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I should listen to. I don't know what I shouldn't listen to. It's very confusing trying to like weed out all of the different types of resources.
That is a major point in the battle with cancer, because you absolutely get so many varying opinions, and it is a very big challenge, and there's so much information that's just false. And I think a lot of it comes from the standard of care as well. While we're at it, first thing they do is try to feed us insurers when you go in to get your chemo or your treatment. Like, that's the worst thing you should drink for cancer.
Yeah.
So what I discovered, I don't know, maybe I can just give you my opinion. What I discovered is you got to read the scientific literature
Yeah.
on cell biology. That's the real science on cancer. It's cell biology. And so you got guys like Professor Seafried and other metabolic therapy type institutes that are actually using metabolic therapy based on Otto Warburg, the Warburg effect, based on Professor Seafried's cell biology. The problem is a lot of the theory is based in mice, and there's not a lot of human trials. The good news is for everyone dealing with cancer, there's a huge amount of human trials coming out now on ketogenic diets, in humans. And there's like 600 open studies right now on ketogenic diets and cancer. Like, why is there so many all of a sudden? And actually, what's really interesting is with your targeted treatment that you're on, there's a study that was just done in France at the top the top hospital in France on ketogenic diet in mice. And it was extremely successful. It was significantly significantly more successful than the standard American diet while using targeted therapies for cancer, like what you're on.
Crazy.
Like significantly better results. And a ketogenic diet could be plant-based, it could be carnivore-based, it could be plant and carnivore-based. And then the most successful in the mice was a rotating ketogenic diet, which is really interesting.
Interesting.
So you're like 15 days ketogenic diet, and then your 15 days where you incorporate healthy fruits and things to get target amount of sugars and carbs from healthy foods, not sugars. So you're still you're not keto because you're taking in sugar and stuff from fruits. So that's a really interesting study that I'm keeping my eye on anyways. I might consider going to a rotating ketogenic diet because I got to make a decision now. I can't wait for the human trials to be completed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about the keto diet, especially like with breast cancer as well. I've heard it's pretty good. I have considered it. I'm not going to lie. I've considered doing the keto diet because I've heard it's also really good for like mental health as well. But I don't, again, I'm a skittish person when it comes to changing, like diets and stuff like that. Cause I'm always like, I don't know what to believe, and everybody's body is different, but I have heard really good things about the keto diet.
Have you tried to listen to Professor Seafried on YouTube?
I have not, no.
So I highly recommend it. That's my cancer advice, like very beginning. The first thing when anybody's diagnosed with cancer is listen to Professor Seafried. That's like the very first move. That's my first recommendation.
Yeah, you're not the only person I think that's told me that. I've had a couple other people like in the comment section as well, like tell me to, look at him, look at his channel.
He doesn't have a channel. He just deals with podcasters like you and me. And he speaks about he's at Boston University. He talks about his research. He is the first person that will give you hope. And he's the first person to tell you how cancer cells actually function. And he keeps it real and he's truthful. And there's a lot of hope long term, even with stage 4 cancer. There's a lot of things that you can do to put yourself in, like, look at you're thriving and you're stage 4. And I think that is a beautiful message for everyone. And just this podcast alone is going to help people to see that just because they tell you that you have an end of life diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean that it's the case. Like, you can do it.
Exactly. I mean, there's people that have been dealing with stage 4 cancer and they're still alive like 25 years later. I think that, years and years ago, it was a death sentence, but it's not a death sentence anymore. And I keep trying to tell everybody that it's just not. The science has come so far. And there is a lot of hope in the journey, and you can live, a successful life with a diagnosis like this, even if it feels different or looks a little bit different. You just have to kind of like adapt to what life gives you. And that's with anything,
Absolutely. And now on that note, what about repurposed drugs? Have you ever looked down at any repurposed drugs that you can use to help manage cancer?
I have never looked into that. That's like a whole land that I have just not even gone down or anything. Yeah.
When you're on targeted therapy, you gotta be careful with repurposed drugs. So I am on targeted therapy right now. I have adenocarcinoma, which is like the most common breast cancer, but it started in my esophagus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm lucky enough to have a protein where I can take a targeted therapy. And I'm on a carnivore diet. I have the odd vegetable because we grow them in the garden, but
Okay.
I'm on a strict carnivore diet. And I highly recommend everyone gives it a shot for 30 days. Most people don't screw it up. You can't really screw it up. You just eat meat. But most people eat lean meat, and that's not gonna help. You need fatty meat. And
Yeah.
so that's my number one part of my treatment is my diet that I think is
Yeah.
managing my cancer the most. But number two is repurposed drugs. And when you're trying to do this alone, which a lot of us are, fighting cancer, it is a challenge. Like you can take the wrong drugs and
Yeah.
you can take too much, you can take too little, and it's not worth it. Like it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for anybody that's been diagnosed with cancer right now? What advice would you have for them?
I would say to write everything down. That was something that people told me to do, and that really helped me was to write everything down so that you can remember things. But also don't give up hope. I think it's very scary at first. Right when you get diagnosed, it's probably one of the most scary things that you'll ever go through in your life. Um, but don't give up hope because it's not a death sentence.
It's not a death sentence. And I think that's very important. I was doing a podcast yesterday and we were saying that cancer doesn't have to be cured. Like, why do you have to cure your cancer? You can manage it as a chronic illness and you can do it. Like, look at
Exactly.
so many people that are thriving with cancer. So you're still working.
I
That's
am
amazing.
still working. Yeah, I still have my job. I do have like intermittent leave. So what that means is that I'm protected through like the Family Medical Leave Act. Um, and I signed up for that because I was with my job for a year prior. You do have to be with your job for a year prior to being able to be accessible to this type of benefits through the state. But um, if I have to take time off, I can take the time off. You get up to like 90 days in a year or something like that. But I work in a school, so we are always on vacation at some time. I think it helps though also that like it's just me that I'm managing. Like I don't have a family as well. So like I have family, but I don't have kids of my own. So I think that also helps in a sense of like I have more energy to rest when I need to rest. But yeah, I've been working this entire time. I've kept my full-time job and it helps give me purpose and gives me something to do. And even when I'm tired, I still can somehow manage to make it through with some coffee, with some coffee.
Nice. With some coffee. Yeah, that's definitely amazing and that's amazing. Well done. My final question I have for you is if you had to do this all over again, what would you do differently?
Ooh, I I don't know if I would do anything different. I would say I think honestly going to therapy earlier. I I should have went to therapy the moment that I got diagnosed and I waited quite a bit of time. I'm not in therapy right now, but I was for about a whole year. But I got PTSD, like triggered PTSD from the diagnosis. And I was having frequent like just episodes of that. And I should have went to therapy a little bit earlier to help me manage. Um, and that's one thing that I would have done differently is right when I would have got diagnosed, I would have went straight to therapy that way I would have had somebody to process through all of the emotions with, because I was holding a lot of it in, and I was trying to be happy for everybody, and I was trying to be strong for everybody. But inside, I really was having a hard time, and having somebody that I could go and talk to and just get all of that out and be a little bit more transparent, honest. I think that's also something that I would have maybe done a little bit differently with my loved ones, has been a little bit more transparent, honest with how I was really doing, instead of trying to be this strong person. I think everybody's trying to be this strong person so we don't worry anybody. But in the end, it kind of like made me in a situation where I didn't have anywhere to filter what I was really going through, with people, if that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. Put everyone else first, and I think that is a common theme for everybody that's just diagnosed with cancer, is that they're putting everyone else ahead of themselves, and that's a very challenging thing because you never get the chance to mourn for yourself. And when you're diagnosed with a illness that is guaranteed to take your life almost, at most, or the odds are definitely not in your favor, you're literally mourning your own life, and you don't get that opportunity because you're still alive. And so how do you mourn your own death while you're still alive? And it's a very challenging situation.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
So okay, so how can people find you? How can people that are watching this that want to follow your journey and see how your surgery goes stay in touch and know what's going on?
Yeah, so I do have a YouTube channel. It's called A New Reviews. I'm contemplating on changing the name right now, but I probably won't anytime soon. It was originally a channel that I was doing like food reviews and stuff on, and then I switched it into a cancer. So you might see a little bit of a mix of both things on there. But yes, my YouTube channel is called A New Reviews. I am not as frequent as posting as maybe I should be, but all of the new stuff will be posted on that channel.
Oh, that's amazing. I will put a link in the description below so that everybody can hop over and follow Brittany's journey with her upcoming surgery. And I wish you all the best. Honestly, my heart goes out to you, and I really love everything that you're doing. You are an inspiration, and it really is truly amazing. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody. We'll don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to everybody soon. Have a good day. Bye now.
Bye.